So, I am particularly grateful to the symposium chairs for inviting me to this 10th edition of Asia Pacific Remote Sensing Symposium. And in fact, we are going to have 4 days for an in-depth perspective of environment monitoring from the vantage point of space. 4 days during which climate change and disaster management will be foremost above all other issues. So I want to get straight to the point. The challenge to which the remote sensing community is now being asked to rise may be the greatest we ever faced in the history of astronautics. In fact, today I think that our societies are facing an unprecedented threat. Unlike military conflicts, social insecurity, and failing economies, accelerating climate change affects not only separate groups of us, but threatens all of humankind as a species. Indeed, if nothing is done, populations will be forced to leave large tracts of this planet before the end of this century. Our economies, our societies, and eventually our very existence will be at risk. And I really think that for the first time ever, we are depending on space assets for our survival. Why? For a single reason, is that space is the one permanent observatory. To understand the climate processes and to qualify possible measures to be taken, we need global and continuous monitoring. This is exactly what we are doing with satellites, which provide a global monitoring, but we need also a series of satellites to get a continuous monitoring. And there is only one tool able to provide the global coverage at multiple scales, long periods of observation, this point is critical, simultaneous monitoring of different variables, and the ability to deliver data rapidly to all stakeholders. And that unique tool, of course, is remote sensing from space. I would say that space agencies cannot provide the solutions to curb climate change. I was at the COP21 last December in Paris, and I insisted on this point. We cannot curb climate change, but I can tell that without space agencies, no one ever will. And this point is very, very critical, because today we are facing a new sense of urgency. Out of the 50 essential climate variables, ECVs, we have identified to measure what is climate change, 26, more than half, are monitored only from space. Space-based systems provide by far the highest amount of data for climate models and continue to improve their forecasting ability. Space observatories are not only vital to research, they are also vital to monitor implementation of actions. With a monitored rainfall decline of 10 to 30% in mid-latitude areas, humanity could be facing a global freshwater deficit of 40% by 2030. And 2030, it's tomorrow. It's in 14 years. It's very, very close for now. This, in fact, unprecedented situation could well turn into the first full-scale test for the resilience of our societies. In-depth understanding of the water cycles and sustainable management of the world's water resources are both highly dependent on space-based monitoring. And this is why, in fact, we decided to have this dinner with all the space agencies worldwide yesterday, because we need to have something as, I would say, united space agencies. You know that a few months ago, we agreed on the Mexico Summit Declaration. It was in September. And this is the fact that the consequence of the fact that driven by an increasing awareness of the issues at stake, our governments have urged space agencies to concentrate their efforts on satellites dedicated to climate research, leading to a unique convergence of priorities in space programs around the globe. In this context, the world's main space agencies advocated an international pooling of space missions in an official declaration ahead of the COP21, which has been held in Paris last December. And this Mexico declaration that we approved, it was on the 28th of September in Mexico City, and it was the initiative of the Mexican Space Agency. This Mexico declaration instilled a new sense of urgency with a view to spurring concrete action. And with this objective in mind, the world space agencies have come together again here in New Delhi yesterday. Implementation of the required actions has been set out in what will be known as the New Delhi Declaration. I think that indeed climate research must be a national priority. And it is in particular for France, because we have encouraged investment, especially in the space sector and especially in climate research. Our budget during the last years has been regularly increased, a significant fact given current budget constraints, at least in Europe. The annual French budget devoted to field space is the second highest in the world per capita, and I am more than ever convinced that those who dare to invest in space for the environment will later reap the rewards in terms of their market positioning. Now, a few words about how we implement this very ambitious policy in France. All French space missions are developed in cooperation with European and international partners. CNES list of approved upcoming climate missions is definitely truly ambitious. With ESA, we have the biomass mission, which will be flying a 12-meter radar reflector to acquire precise estimates of the amount of carbon stored in the world's forest. With Germany, we are developing Merlin, which is a mission focusing on the impact of methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse effect gas, and Microcarb to measure the atmospheric distribution and dynamics of carbon dioxide. We have, of course, as it had been said by Charlie, SWOT, which is a CNES NASA satellite to measure surface water heights of rivers, lakes, streams, and flood zones using an innovative radar technology. And we have also a very ambitious cooperation with China, CFOSAT, which will be the first French-Chinese joint space mission, which will monitor waves and winds to provide the eagerly awaited missing piece in our understanding of atmosphere-ocean interactions. I want also to insist on the impressive achievements of international cooperation. In Europe, CNES is a key player in the remote sensing programs conducted by EUMETSAT and ESA, and within the European Union Copernicus Climate Monitoring Space Program. In the US, we highly value our long-standing cooperation with NASA and NOAA, through which we built and orbited the highly successful JASON series of satellites. The last one has been launched from Vandenberg in California on the 18th of January. And we started, in fact, with Topex Poseidon 23 years ago. And we have a long series of data during the last 23 years. And we are also collaborating on the Calypso mission, mapping clouds and aerosols. As our second biggest international partner outside Europe, India has also become central to what we do. We have indeed an Indo-French alliance for climate space missions. And 15 years ago, CNES and ISRO signed a pioneering agreement that focused the French-Indian space cooperation on climate monitoring. This visionary agreement led to the launch in 2011, 5 years ago, of Megatropic, a 3D mapper of cloud dynamics. 2 years later, in 2013, a second mission conceived and built together was put into orbit. The Sarlaltica oceanography satellite also provides highly accurate data on the freshwater cycle. These satellites are currently operated by CNES and ISRO. They are only the first of a series of dedicated climate missions. France and India recently engaged in the development of an infrared climate monitoring satellite designed to map heat exchanges on Earth's surface, heralding new prospects for agriculture, forest monitoring, soil and groundwater pollution monitoring and volcanology. And we also decided to cooperate on future Indian interplanetary missions. These are in fact vital issues, and we have obviously economic benefits. These programs are bringing deeper insights into key areas like monsoon forecasting, food security, and water research management. This is a perfect example of how climate missions are not without economic benefits. Quite the opposite, in fact, as a growing scarcity of resources and the need to maximize their procurement has resulted in a recent boom for satellite application. And I bet that space activities will become a major pillar of the global economy before, let us say, 2020. We are now going towards new generations of technology. The experts' conclusion leave no room for doubt. Severe weather disasters are going to get more frequent and more intense. In 1999, Cyclone Odisha killed, unfortunately, 10,000 people here in India, whereas 2014, just 15 years later, Cyclone Hudhud, of similar intensity, claimed only 100 lives. 10,000 people, 100 people. And in this particular case, the contribution of space clearly proved very, very valuable. However, I would like to recall that Hudhud left India facing financial losses amounting to $11 billion US. That is more than 150 Indian missions to Mars. Newer generations of space technologies will have to greatly improve anticipation and response to severe weather disasters in order to further reduce their impact on our populations and economies. Now, I just would like to insist on a few points to conclude. It is clear that the need to coordinate our missions and pool resources through international partnerships is increasingly compelling, and this is the reason of the dinner of yesterday night. I would like to emphasize that our community has for decades been a pioneer in providing a truly global response. International programs and freely available data, this point is very important, freely available data in order to be sure that everybody can use them, have from the early days been the general rule in earth science and environment monitoring from space. Today, more than ever before, it is the global essence of space and the spirit of universality that must inspire the actions we have to take, each according to our respective capabilities. I think that it will take commitment and courage, it's obvious. But walking on the moon, and Charlie is a much better expert than me for that, orbiting space missions, journeying across the solar system and beyond, and revolutionary communications and transportation will have been in vain if we fail to rise to this challenge. In this regard, I would like to quote what has been said by the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon: "There is no plan B since there is no planet B." Thank you for your attention.